Okay, so we're pretty much finished on this section of the job with Colin, and I'm really pleased with how it's all gone, to be honest. I mean, really am happy with how that looks. But for the final touches, so for a more realistic effect, we want to blur these edges very slightly, where we had some of our hard masks that we didn't feather, blur in some of the places where the hard shadows meet the highlights, blur down here, a little bit more detail. I'm going to add a little bit more detail to the arm. I'm going to fix this area here so this all blends in nicely, fix the hand, and where this bell fits in here, and this bit here in the background. So what I wanted to show you was a great little tip that I only found out on Photoshop about, I don't know, 2 years ago, and I don't think I've mentioned it so far, and if I have, apologies. But as you can see, as we've gone on through this project, you can see that we've got, tons of paths, which happily we can probably close down now. So let's drag that back into there. And that's its little home in there. And you can see that as I've gone along, I've created many layers. And this file is 102 meg with 1.19 gig of RAM usage. And if you look at the title, which is up here in the top left of the screen, this one's Colin 9, okay? Now, what I have done as I've gone along is I've saved 9 different versions of this. And the reason for that is this is a really important job. And it was crucial that, history-wise, that I had backup versions of it from the early stages, so that as I could flatten this down slightly as I worked, especially for the crowd background details and things like that, that when I come to do a coloured version of this, I can jump back into some of the old versions and I'll still be able to remove the adjustment layer for the levels background on this and the colour overlay, and revert this back to colour and then add some colour to Colin. To be able to go back to the older versions of that is quite useful, because for the file that I'm actually working on in Photoshop, I don't want to keep tons and tons and tons of layers in here. Even though there's still a few, and there wasn't that much that I could flatten down, I've still got the trousers separate, still got the jacket and the shading all separate here. So the karate suit look, there's the original photo. So what I'm going to show you now is a little trick which I learned from someone online, and I can't remember who it was. So let's select the very top layer. And this is wonderful when especially when you're doing lots of painting like this, or you're doing something a lot more detailed, lots of colours. You might have a highlight layer, a shadows layer, greens, reds, blues, background layer, things like that. And at one point, if you get confused with all your layers, because it can get like that in Photoshop sometimes really quickly when you start doing a huge job, this is a great way to save out versions of it without flattening the whole thing. So select the top layer like this, and in our case that's Colin's final face detail here. And what we do, a shortcut on the keyboard is Command, Alt, Shift together and E. Now what you'll see that's happened here is a layer has jumped up in Photoshop at the very top. It's called Layer 1. We're going to call that Completed Flat 1, we'll call it. So we've got our completed one flattened file at the top, and we can now delete all these if we want to. But before we do that, because I am going to do that, because if you look down here, it's 1.29 gig in RAM usage, and the file's only 102 meg, but we're using up a lot of RAM because we've got all these layers, and it's a very high resolution file. If I go like this, I don't think we've done this yet in this project to show you, but if I just quickly show you what the actual image size is, you'll see that it's 5077 pixels and it's 600 dpi. So if we put that in centimeters, you can see it's basically an A4, isn't it? It's like basically 210 by 297, so it's A4 at 600 dpi. Letter size for anyone in America is similar to that. Okay, so, and just so you're happy, here we go in inches. So it's 8.4 by 11.7, that's 600 dpi. Okay, so let's cancel that. So it's quite a big file size, and it would be nice to get it smaller. So there's one thing we want to do before we get to this stage. Remember when we were working earlier in the project that we took layers and we dropped colour overlay onto those layers. So if I double click this, you'll see I've got colour overlay here selected, and I used this colour here. Now what we can do, before we flatten all this and get rid of them, because then we won't be able to get to this, is if we right click that and go copy layer style, okay, like that, what we're going to do then is we're going to select this second layer down, scroll all the way down to the bottom, hold the shift key, select that. That's going to select all the layers. We're going to hit, ooh, yes. We're going to hit the trash can and delete all those. Now we've only got one flat layer of completed work that we've done. So what I do want to do now is add an adjustment layer like this and go black and white adjustment layer. Now we haven't got to worry about it clipping to just this layer because we've only got this layer left. And as you can see, it's made a nice black and white version of that completely. Yeah, so that's all one colour, unified tone. And the black belt is still nice and black, which was what I wanted. I wanted that originally from the start, if you remember, to be much darker than this, because it was important to me that the black belt signified Colin's grade, and the fact that he was putting this pin through his arm represented black belt, mind over matter and strength. So we've got that. What we can now do is that will unify everything. So we right click it and we go merge down, and that is now all black and white. But we did have that slight sepia tone. Now this is where I've got to decide whether to leave it black and white or put the sepia tone on it. But we do have the sepia tone, so we can right click that and go paste layer style. There we go, look. And what we've got now is the original sepia tones of how that photo was. I unified it all as black and white first, which took any stray colours out that we didn't want. And that's gone back on there, so it looks a lot more like the original photo. Now, if you look carefully here, you can see there's a little bit of trace still, obviously, of quite a lot of yellow in there, especially when it moves into the white. I quite like that, actually, because it really does look now a lot more like the old photo in the original version. But we could still, if we wanted to, do another adjustment layer and remove a little bit of that yellow. But to be fair, I quite like that. I think it looks great. And let's do Command H to hide that. Yeah, very pleased with that, really pleased. And once we've done all these final little adjustments, I think that will look great, and hopefully Damien and Alan will be pleased as punch. I do hope so, because that's really what it's all about. Okay, so that's about it for the painting section of Colin. The next section will be to work on this. Oh yes, and what I forgot to mention is, of course, we've still got all our paths. All we did was flatten this down, so everything that we did when we saved our selections and everything, they're still saved inside this file. So we can go load selection and choose the new complete outline, click OK, Command C for copy. We can jump into this one here. Now you see, when I started this and put this idea together, I only had the original version of the photo. So let's come down here, let's select Colin, and that's that layer there. What we can do now is we can paste in our finished piece. It's practically finished. Command T for transform. Hold down the Alt key so it will scale to the center. What I'll do is I'll just scale this down a bit, put it somewhere like that, click OK. And then what we can do is we can remove that layer there. And then we've got a nice Colin complete, let's call it that. And we'll press Command S and save that. And this is going to be the next section that I'm going to be working on for painting. This will probably be a speed painting, apart from maybe a few bits of explanations here and there. But this is going to be very basic speed painting, so basic brush in Photoshop, nothing special. I do have some special brushes that I use now and again, but we're going to use, just like we've done on the other one, just a nice soft brush, jump around for different colours, and use these as our reference for this Rat Dragon and the cool Mr. Nasty Shark Toothless guy. And that will be part 2, which we will then turn into a poster, which will be version 2 of this. So when this is all complete, there are going to be 4 things that are going to be finished here. Part 1 obviously was creating this. Let's just deselect that and making that good, making all that good. And I'm so pleased with that now. I really am pleased with the way that's come out. So part 1 was to fix that photo. Done. We can tick the box there. Yeah. Part 2 was to take that photo, put it in here, create a dragon shark tattoo, and make a Enter the Dragon styly kind of poster. Just for the guys, so that they can use this one and print this as a keepsake of Colin, and then this one as a poster if they like, that they can do you know, on a large format print or on a board or a canvas or something like that. They can make anything they want out of this then. And then obviously the most important part, which was the original brief for this, was to take Colin's portrait, which is why it was retouched in the first place, and paint it on here. Now, what I'm going to do in this section of time scale as I'm producing all these is this is going to be the next job, because I needed to get this done first so that I could get Colin's portrait to a stage that was good enough for me to work from as a painting, and I can now follow this. And if you remember, we created lots of face details like this. A friend of mine is going to help me cut some masks so that I can use those. So I'll have a mask for the whole outline. These will be exported and saved as EPS files so they can be cut on a plotter, and we'll be using Ultramask to cut those. And then what we'll be able to do is we'll be able to take Colin's portrait and we'll be able to mask this area here. Now, I've just been measuring this up this morning. This is very small. Obviously, this is actually the airbag section from the dashboard on the Mini. So from top to bottom, this edge is only 185mm, and from left to right, we're looking at 258. So this portrait really is going to be quite small. So it will be a challenge, but it's a challenge I am happy to take on board, and I'm excited about that. It will be the first proper portrait that I've airbrushed in some years, 12 years maybe, especially at this kind of size. So that will be the next part, and we'll be recording that too as we do it. So I hope you join me for that project. Okay, so that's just about it for this episode. We're going to drag our little paths into here and say goodbye to those for now, because we don't need those at the moment. Thanks for watching up to this stage. If you've got this far, I really do appreciate it. It's been a lot of time and effort that's gone into this, and if you've stuck with me and if you've learned anything, great, fantastic, then I've done my job, haven't I? But I wanted to share this process with you, and as a special gift to Damien and Alan, to create something extra special from Colin. And then the next section will be to get the new needles in the custom micron and the HPCH and get this cleaned and sanded down and get some airbrushing done. So stick around if you will, and please join me for those. I'll see you soon.